So it's not the airlines, right? It's not the trucker. It's the freight forwarder and the buyer's relationship that makes everything go.
Welcome to Real Leadership, the show that cuts through the clutter to spotlight leaders who make, move, and process things in the real economy. This isn't about buzzwords or theories. It's about bold decisions, solving challenges, and the strategies driving industries that matter. I'm Jim Weaver, CEO of the Owner Group. In every episode, we get real about what it takes to turn vision into action and obstacles into opportunities. Let's go.
Today, in our ongoing series on tech and the real economy, we're exploring an interesting link in the supply chain with Chris Condon, founder and CEO of Aircon, an exciting early-stage company that develops AI-driven workflow automation tools for small and mid-size freight forwarders. Chris grew up in farming towns in Snohomish, Washington. I don't know if I got that pronunciation right. And Elmwood, Wisconsin. I know that one, where sports and early mornings in the farm country shaped his approach to leadership. The son of one of Burlington Northern's first female executives, Chris, as he wrapped up high school, set out to make his way in the world. Real-world responsibility drove him to leave college early to support his young family, juggling 3 jobs while carving a path into the freight world. Chris' career in third-party logistics launched in El Paso as a distribution manager in 1997. In 2011, he co-founded Apex Diversified Solutions. In 2013, Chris joined Transmade, where he led a turnaround in their Seattle branch and was later promoted to CEO, then went on to serve as CEO of Tricon Logistics through its acquisition. In 2021, Chris founded Aircon AI to address the inefficiencies in the air freight industry and explore how automation could improve organizational workflows for smaller freight companies. Its flagship platform, Captain Cargo, streamlines quoting, booking, and routing for air freight. Aircon recently completed a successful round of funding and is poised to scale. Welcome to the show, Chris.
Hey, thanks. And thanks for having me. I appreciate that.
Did I get that all right?
For the most part, you did. So TransTrade, we did a management buyout of them. So TransTrade and Tricon is actually the same company, but we just rebranded it. But yeah, for the most part, yeah, close enough.
Well, there we go. There we got it straight now. All right. So you were CEO from
2016. Yeah. So I worked at TransTrade early on, turned that office around, and then kind of came to the conclusion where I either need to get something more stable because the corporation was losing too much money, or I had kids graduating high school, one going into high school, so something more stable. And then the owner of TransTrade said, hey, well, instead of that, why don't I just guarantee it for the next couple of years and you become CEO? And I said, if I can turn it around in the first year, I'm going to need a lot more money. So that's what we agreed to. That's how I actually got back to Texas. It's actually kind of a funny story there. My youngest one, who just got married last Friday, he was becoming a freshman in high school, and I was meeting the other offices, if you will, and we're determining, do I do the job in Seattle or do I do it in out of Dallas, where the headquarters was? And my wife and I kind of made the decision. I'm like, okay, let's just stay in Seattle, let Josh get through his high school years, and then if it all works out, we'll move to Texas. And that next morning I woke up with a long list of texts from my son, said, I want to move back to Texas. Don't blame this on me. And so what was interesting about that is that was early August, and in Texas, sports are part of your education, right? So it's a class and whatnot. So you really try out for the team on the first day of school. Well, him being a basketball player, I called my executive assistant and said, hey, Jill, I need you to find me a school that my wife would be okay with, because I'm going to go pick him up Friday. School starts next week. So all I need is a good school district. We'll figure out everything else after that. Well, she graduated Marcus. Her husband graduated Marcus. So Josh ended up at Marcus High School, which was a fantastic experience for us. But yeah, that's how we got back to Texas.
Okay. Well, let's zoom out. I started to frame it out a little bit in the intro, but big picture, explain a little bit more in depth what Aircon does. Let's start there.
Yeah, Aircon is a family of AI agents, if you will, that helps automate and create capacity for freight forwarders. So there's a lot of different issues depending on how much you know about air freight, but like access to rates, access to who goes where, what is what's the transit time, what is the schedules, all that different stuff creates a problem for freight forwarders. It's not a big deal for, let's say, Dallas to London, where 29% of the freight goes to, right? Most people have a contact or can make that call, but it's the one-offs or the not so common areas for passengers that gets a little tricky, if you will. And creating a network that everybody can play in was really important to us. So how do we create a virtual and a physical network to really support the forwarder at scale? And that's really where it came down to. I like to compete. When I took over TransTrade, I can compete on everything, right? I can demonstrate service or whatnot. But in air freight, the rates are really driven by consolidation and through volume, if you will. There's an old saying that we taught, you got to have the freight to get the rate, and you got to have the rate to get the freight. So it's always the chicken or the egg. So the logic was, how do we leverage this? Because most of the volume, over 80% of the global volume, is moved by small to medium-sized freight forwarders. It's not moved by your top 10.
80% is moved by the small ones.
Yeah, of actual cargo. Not talking about parcels or small pack, but actual cargo, 80% is moved by the small to medium-sized freight forwarders, which, there's 120,000 around the world, right?
Yeah. I understand freight forwarding as they're kind of like the booking agents for freight, right? I mean, is that a good way to look at it? Or?
Yeah, I kind of look at them as that travel agent for freight, for sure, right? So sometimes it's air, sometimes it's truck, sometimes I got to hold it in a warehouse. So that's a good way to look at it, for sure.
So did Aircon start out as a freight forwarding company, and then through this AI evolution become more of a service to freight forwarding? Is that the way? Do I understand that correctly? Or
it started off as a wholesale consolidator that was tech enabled, right? So we knew that we wanted to use tech to consolidate and to maximize profits for the freight forwarders. And using the tech to think, hey, if I have 1,000 shipments, I have this BSA with this airline, these 5 shipments maximize the profit for the freight forwarder on this, et cetera, et cetera. And what happened was that was going very, very good, right? We provide rates within seconds on our platform, door to airport, pretty much anywhere in the world. But what was happening is our customers kept telling us is, Chris, I love it. I love the fact that it's easy, but I don't want to key in more information, right? So we created what we did call Captain Cargo, and I'm not sure if we're going to call that Captain Cargo moving forward, but Captain Cargo was creative to really unlock and bring more forwarders onto our platform, right? And within the first 90 days, we saw our win percentage go up by 40%. We saw our revenue go 2.5x in the first 90 days. So just massive. And that's when a light bulb went off. It's like, well, if this is helping us, just imagine putting the AI in front of our customers, right? So our customer gets the email, we digest it, we structure it into our rate engine, into our route AI agent, if you will, for lack of a better word, and then we respond with the quote. So 24/7, 365, no holidays, no time delays from your customers from overseas. So we launched that in January and had great success right away out of the gate, people signing up for it.
So are they interacting directly with the AI tool, or are they interacting with somebody from your team who is leveraging the tool to feed them back?
So 90% of the time it's interacting all with the agent, meaning the AI agent. The 10% is really based on criteria that we set up. So like in our case, we don't want to, we're not automatically spotting DG, right? We're not automatically spotting anything over 2,000 kilos because in the current market.
Sorry, what's DG?
Dangerous goods, hazmat, and those type of things. And there's some weird stuff, not weird stuff, but there's some things that are considered DG or hazmat, like batteries, like lithium batteries, right? We're turning that on here pretty quick because there's a standard for that, right? How much, quantity, what the UN number, all that kind of good stuff. So we are turning that on, and we're turning on the automation of the spot quotes, but it's just not instant, right? So if it's 5,000 quotes, it's probably going to take us an hour, or no more than an hour, I should say, to return that quote.
Modernization, integration, infrastructure, AI readiness. Onin Technology helps industrial IT leaders build momentum without the resume bloat or vendor babysitting. We deliver talent vetted by real subject matter experts, scoped project teams built for results, and consulting from tech leaders who've done the work. Contract to hire, direct hire, or statement of work, we do what fits. Ready to move? So are we. Visit onintechnology.com.
So you have never competed with freight forwarders as Aircon. You've always been an enabling tool,
Yes, absolutely.
an enabling partner. Now you have this tool. Okay, got it.
Yeah, that's really our DNA, if you will, is we want the forwarder to succeed. We look at it as this tech is expensive to build, this tech is expensive to buy. There's all these different things that you need to make it work, from a TMS to an ERP to a RMS to a WMS, all these different systems you need to purchase. We want to leverage it so they all communicate to each other, because we see the LLM really replacing APIs, if you will, and being that protocol for air freight is really where we're driving towards.
Okay. You had a good career going in the freight industry. What tipped the scale for you to step out on your own? Is it just in you to do that, or do you see like some urgent need, or a combination of both?
Well, originally I went on my own because I was bored. Right, you get to a certain size and you're busy every day, right? You're doing things every day, but you're not really creating or adding a lot of value every day. So I kind of got, I say I get bored. My wife will say I get angry or unhappy. So we decided to say, hey, let's go do something on our own and let's try to build something to fix or build. That's really been kind of my MO my entire career, right? I was part of a SWAT team when other offices had problems, right? Send Chris over there and a couple other folks and look at processes, look at people, look at systems. So it's always been in my personal DNA is how do we fix things? And so building to fix things is really what gets me up in the morning and excited every day to do it. Not sure if I answered that question properly, but
Yeah, no, that's good. That's good. You just had, if you're a little edgy all the time because you're not doing it, then that's probably a good reason to do it. So that's as good as any. All right. So I pulled some research on you, listened to some other interviews, and I heard you say a couple of times, the freight forwarding is our North Star. Can you share a moment or a story that first made you realize how central they are to the future of cargo?
Yeah, I'm not sure I know the exact date and time that happened, but over my career, freight forwarders are non-asset based for the most part, right? So they don't own the trucks, they don't own the airlines, and they get picked on a lot. Right. So they're the ones that got to make sure the documents are right, and known shippers and TSA or government regulations are mainly on the forwarder in terms of security standpoint. The truckers are all trying to maximize their lane, if you will. And so it's difficult for the freight forwarder to know everything, particularly in air freight. And I look at it as the fact that, there's roughly 1,000 airlines around the world. I can't name more than 20 off the top of my head, right? And the average person can maybe, 5.
Yeah.
And so it's difficult to know who goes where, how it can travel. And really, they're the linchpin to everything, right? So it's not the airlines, right? It's not the trucker. It's the freight forwarder and the buyer's relationship that makes everything go. So how do we make their job easier to go get more business and to compete at scale? That's really been kind of our North Star from day one, is how do we help the freight forwarders win? Not the trucker so much, not the airline so much, but the freight forwarder, not by lowering your rate or lowering your margin trucker, your margin airline, but how do we become a better customer to the trucker? How do we become a better customer to the airline to where it's a win-win situation by consolidation is one, or by guaranteeing service levels for two, because the airline's capacity is evergreen. Right. So once that plane leaves, that capacity is out of the market. So if you're not utilizing that capacity, it's a lose for the airline. It's a lose for the freight forwarder. And at the end of the day, a lose for the buyer. Right. So that's really where it came from is how do we keep forwarders relevant long term in air freight? Right. How do we provide the tech to compete against the large multinationals? Because they're doing it, right? The what we're building, so is DSV, so is Kuganagel, so is, pick whatever your multinational is. They're building it, and they have the clout or the reputation with the airlines to get the direct connection with the airlines. Well, if you're only shipping 10, 15 shipments a week, the airlines aren't going to want to do that. They're going to force you into a rate repository booking platform at some point. Right? Maybe not tomorrow, but at some point, they're not going to have a customer service rep that you can call and say, hey, I need a rate from, Chicago to Kenya, right? Can you help me out?
I've been listening to interviews from a conference that went off in DC this last week called Winning the AI Race. The All In podcast put it on. Have you heard any of that? It was really good.
I heard some of it. I haven't read all of it or watched all of it yet, but I did hear bits and pieces of it.
A lot of the guests were talking about job creation and productivity gains tied to AI. They talked about AI as kind of the great equalizer for small and mid-sized business. I've heard you talk about that as well. And then one of the guys, I can't remember who it was, I should have written it down, but he talked about how AI can potentially give the American worker competitive superpowers. And I thought, man, that's a pretty compelling vision, So I'm wondering if you can connect some of those ideas to reality for us. So Captain Cargo uses AI agents like Laura, Rocky, Rosie for quoting, booking, exceptions management. Can you give us a real world example of how these AI agents are significantly improving the workflow, the performance of these small to medium sized businesses?
Yeah, and I would say there's three distinct benefits in my mind. One per agent, if you will. There's multiple benefits, but the biggest benefit on the quoting side is the art of winning the deal, if you will, or speed to market, which is the number one priority in air freight. Rate is actually the second priority for win percentage. So 60% of U.S. exports is controlled by overseas, right? So you're sitting somewhere in another country. You're buying something, you go to your freight forwarder. That freight forwarder comes to their partner in the U.S., freight forwarder B, if you will. Obviously, there's a time gap. U.S. to Europe, maybe 6 hours. U.S. to South Africa, maybe 12 hours, et cetera. So the AI helps you respond to that quote within seconds or in the time of whatnot, which means you're going to win the shipment more often than not based on service.
Sure.
So that's the quoting agent, which speed to market is really the key to improving your win percentage. The booking agent is really the first time where I see it really benefits the freight forwarder in terms of margin, right? So at the booking time, we already know what the customer is willing to pay. We know what the customer or the buyer is willing to pay, what the buyer's expectation is in terms of transit. And so let's say I use Milwaukee to London a lot for this example is we quote it over Chicago, right? So we truck it from Chicago, Milwaukee to Chicago, and then a direct flight on, pick an airline, Chicago to London. And we do that for a lot of different reasons. One, there's lots of capacity out of there. It's very stable. Like we can meet the demands of the customer. But at the time of booking, so now I already have the freight. I know what the customer is willing to pay for it. I know when they need it by. Now what's the best option, right? Maybe there's delays in Chicago. So I quoted it originally on British Airways over Chicago, but Chicago airport's a little congested. Oh, and it's summer schedule. So BA has a flight out of Cincinnati that has lots of capacity on, right? So the AI agent or our booking agent at the time of booking validates capacity, validates rates, and hey, if we move it over Cincinnati versus over Chicago, it's 50% less cost, right? You don't have to pass that on to your customer. You can pass that on to the freight, the freight forwarder doesn't have to, but it maximizes their margin, right? Including the trucking cost and whatnot. So that's really the big benefit is meeting the customer's expectations and maximize profit at the same time. So it's that whole, what is it, fast, cheap, or
speed, quality, cost.
There you go. So in this case, you get all three, right? Because you already know what the best cost was. You won the shipment. You know the speed, and now you maximize your profitability in that. So that's the booking agent. The exception agent is really where the different AI comes into play. And that's where the physical network also comes into play as well, right? So let's say you're going to Milwaukee to Joburg now, right? South Africa, over Chicago and over London, right? And let's say the plane had a flat tire and missed the connecting flight. Well, passenger is not a big deal. We get to London and we raise our hand, says, I'm sorry, I missed that flight in 2 hours, but, book me on another one. Well, cargo doesn't have a voice, right? So what happens? Well, the freight forwarder here in the U.S. gets notified that, hey, there's a delay or missed flight. But the buyer in South Africa, they may need it tomorrow, right? They may have a line down situation. So our exception agent puts that power back to the buyer or gives that power back to the buyer in real time. Says, okay, hey, we missed the flight. It's on it's rebooked for, today's Tuesday, on Thursday's flight, blah, blah, blah. Or approve this as we can move it on instead of through BA, we can do it through Virgin. By the way, your cost is now $10,000 more. Approve or disapprove, pay or not pay, however we set that up. And then our physical network and our boots on ground, if you will take it from BA and give it to Virgin, relabel it, whatnot. And the point there is that stuff happens in logistics, right? Tires get blown out or things get made, overbooked, whatever. It's how you respond to that keeps your business, right? Because we're a firm believer that people do business with people and we're going to solve problems. And it's uncomfortable to say, hey, yeah, I know it got delayed in London last night. We could have made that flight 6 hours ago, but now we can't. Now it's on the Thursday flight, and now it's going to cost you $1 million a day because you have a line down situation. We believe that's really where our hooks will get in terms of a must-have.
Yeah, and you think of the manual process that would be without that tool going out and looking for the best options,
Well, and the uncomfortableness.
Yes, yeah. That is... that's not quite superpower level, but that's strong. That's strong.
Well, I mean, if your livelihood is the fact that your budget is X, and your number one priority is making sure that line never goes down, right? I mean, it's pretty powerful to make sure you don't get fired.
Yeah. So, do you think small players empowered by AI like Captain Cargo, will they truly be able to level the playing field against these enterprise giants, you think?
Well, that's where Aircon comes into play, right? So as we give you all the different options, right? So again, an air freight rate's not the number one priority. It's speed to market, trust that when you say it's going to be there in 3 to 4 days, it's there in 3 or 4 days. And so the AI part of it helps the small to medium size look and act larger, right? So we give them the global network. We give them the global capabilities at competitive rates, right? So it's not like they're maybe the best rates, but they are competitive. And if you have something more competitive, we pull your rates, right? So it's really the best of both worlds. We're also connected to other wholesalers or neutral parties, if you will. That allows it, hey, if Aircon doesn't have the best rate or American Airlines doesn't have the best rate, but Shipco does or AMI does or AWA does, great. We're gonna quote it off those and you win.
So you're pulling from those places as well.
We are, yeah. And the idea is that we're trying to provide the best solution to the freight forwarder as possible. I don't care if we move it or not. I care that you win the business as a freight forwarder.
You don't care if you move it or not. I mean, you're really not moving it in any of those situations.
Well, we do because we got to keep people honest, right? So, not everybody goes everywhere. Like you look at like you can pick one of the wholesalers, UAC or AWA. They may be really good to Australia. They may be really good to South Africa, but they don't have anything to Kenya, right? So we have to create that's really why we created this virtual / physical network, is to make sure that you have the capabilities when your customer needs it. And then long term, that's when the consolidation will really come into play. And how do we maximize the capacity of the airline is, hey, like right now we have 160 customers on the platform. Let's say we have 5 going to Dallas to London every Thursday. We now can leverage that with, let's say, the airline, pick an airline and say, hey, these 5 freight forwarders have this much tonnage every Thursday that we're going to give to you, again, airline A, every Thursday. By the way, you're going to bill Aircon for that, and then we'll distribute the reduction in that cost to all the freight forwarders. And we can do that because we're taking dense cargo and put a voluminous cargo, reducing our chargeable weight. And the benefit to the airline is every Thursday they know they are going to get this amount of freight, which is more important to them than the 5 to 10 cents difference in the kilo rate.
Facing sudden growth or limited by traditional financing? Momentum Capital Funding empowers businesses with real-time cash flow through AR factoring. Get the funding you need and fuel your success. Visit MomentumCapitalFunding.com to learn more.
I also found a quote where you said that the industry will become less labor intensive, but more intellectually demanding, and that the human value will shift from operational execution to exception management and strategic advisory. That was an interesting comment. So what are the biggest challenges and opportunities you foresee in upskilling the existing logistics workforce? Also getting a business that's been around for a long, long time. A lot of people have been doing it for a long time. Where's the opportunity? What's the need in terms of adaptation to deal with this AI evolution?
Well, it's coming, ready or not, right? It's coming, right? I mean, again, you look at like Flexport, you look at DSV, Kuganagel, Expeditors, they're very tech savvy, if you will. And AI is coming. When I say that it's about exception management, that's what freight forwarders are. And visibility and exception is really about dealing with things that don't go right. If they go right, nobody cares, right? Like nobody cares if I booked it on American Airlines going to London. As long as everything went as planned, everybody's good, and then it just becomes about rate, right? But the reality of it is particularly in air freight, right? It's all about exceptions, right? You don't care if you're your freight's in London, right? You care that your freight's in London and it's moving along to your next step in the process, right? And that's why I kind of laugh a little bit when I hear companies say, "Oh, we're providing visibility." Visibility to what? And who cares, right? Like if it's in London, who cares, right? I mean, everybody knows that I can, whatever.
Yeah.
But I laugh at that all the time. It's like, yeah, just because I know where it's at doesn't mean it helps me. So the AI is going to help speed that up because time kills or causes problems in finding the solution, right? So if your freight gets stuck in London for whatever reason, if it goes in the BA warehouse, man, that could be lost for months, right? Because it's all automated, right? So if it gets labeled wrong or scanned wrong, yeah, it's in the London warehouse, but I don't know where it's at. So the exception speed is pretty important to that because you're moving along.
Is that a different worker or is that a upskilling thing? Is that a different profile of who's in the business kind of as this thing evolves?
Well, if we, again, thinking longer term than the next 12 months is when you start building ULDs and taking it off the airport and into the local markets, if you will. You have less damage. You have less touching of the cargo, which means less damage and chances of losing it. And the airline is handling it in a bulk unit, right? So a ULD type unit. So it's less likely to lose that one, that pallet or those 3 boxes because it's being handled as a unit, not as a individual shipment.
Yeah. Yeah. So looking ahead more, beyond what Aircon is currently utilizing, what are you excited about for the potential to further, like when you look at logistics in general, you're in the business. What else is exciting to you in terms of technology coming to logistics?
There's lots of things, right? But the biggest thing that I get excited about is the utilization of capacity, right? And you can think about the environmental side of it, things and those things, right? Is each airline is for cargo specifically, they're all kind of out for their own, right? It's not like they have a ride share for passengers. Like, so if I want to get to London, I can go to an American Airlines. I may fly on a BA flight or on a Virgin flight. Don't quote me on that because I'm not sure if those are the exact ride shares. But the point is that there's a ride share program in place to go from Dallas, London, Kenya, all on American Airlines ticket, right? But on cargo, that doesn't happen very often, right? And there's some protectionism that goes on. The origin controls the rates, not the destination, doesn't really see the quote unquote buy rates for the most part. And so I'm pretty excited to make that more transparent and more driven by data, not driven off of shipper by shipper.
That is an upside. Taking advantage of capacity in terms of just reducing waste and stuff is really huge.
Well, and from a supply chain flow, right? I mean, think about like if let's say airline A is charging $1 a kilo and all the other airlines that are $1.50. Well, of course we're going to book everything on the dollar, right? And now it backs up and now they're overbooked, if you will, just like passengers, right? And then it's delayed. Well, we don't want the delay, and the plane that's empty is still flying. So how can we, there's got to be a way to, again, ride share for lack of a better.
Yes. Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
And the AI can predict that, right? Because the airlines have problems by, hey, you booked it, but you didn't show up, right? And, there's labor issues in terms of, it used to be 4 hours before the flight, you could have it delivered. Well, many times it's, you got to have it delivered to the airport 24 hours in advance, but no more than 48 hours in advance, right? So it's like there's a window there that I believe that there's a better way to manage that capacity. But it'll take people working together. It'll take ground handlers working together, airlines, airports working together to really streamline that, because it's not just the tech, right? The tech is cool and does a lot of things, but we got to figure out a way to what is your swim lane, stay in your swim lane, and let's have the common goal of making air freight fluid.
Yeah, good. All right. So you grew up in farming communities, one in Washington and then in Wisconsin.
It's Snohomish, by the way. The name of that town in Washington was Snohomish. Is actually a Native American name. Yeah.
Okay. So how did that shape you today? Those roots. I grew up doing farm work too in Wisconsin, like you. So how did that impact your leadership today?
Well, a couple of different styles. I think the biggest thing that it taught me was I never worried too much about how much work needs to be done or how much work, how much pain or time I have to spend doing it. It's really, wake up in the morning and what needs to get done today, right? On a dairy farm, the cow has to be milked no matter what, right? It doesn't matter if you're sick, broken arm, broken leg, the cow has to be milked. So you just got to figure out how to get it done. So I think that's a big part of who I am in terms of leadership, right? I kind of whatever it takes mentality. If this is what's good for us and what we need to get done, let's figure out a way to get it done.
Man, dairy farmers never get a day off.
They don't. They don't.
Ever. No vacation. I mean, those are some hardworking people, man. Really hardworking people.
At one point I asked my uncle, who runs the family farm, and I asked him, I'm like, hey, how much will it cost? Like, I kind of want to get out of this rat race. I'm going to be a farmer. And he goes, well, if you can come up with $2 million, I'll help you out with everything else. And I was like 24, 25 years old. And his name's Randy. I go, Randy, if I had $2 million, there's no way I'm farming.
Right. Yeah.
The other thing that shaped my leadership is I grew up in somewhat, Snohomish wasn't necessarily a large town, but it was a 4A school in Washington, which was the largest school district, if you will, would have graduated with like 400 or 500 kids. Moving to a small town in Wisconsin, I graduated with 32, right? So it's just different cultures, right? There's pros and cons to both of them, but being able to adapt to that, learn different people's point of view, I think has helped me understand when people have issues or different concerns. It's given me the ability to not necessarily agree with them all the time, but definitely make sure I understand their point of view and show respect to that.
Yeah. So you're not really a startup. You're past that phase, but you're still, early stage, exciting times. You're getting some real traction, but how have you managed to stay inspired and energetic, show up the way you need to show up consistently through the ups and downs?
Well, I think there's three things for that. One is the team that's around us is phenomenal and they're passionate on what they do. So, I think about Earl and on how he, because he likes to serve, right? He wants to serve people and help people. And so he's passionate at that. I got Dennis, our CTO, who his whole mission in life was to build something that matters, right? He goes, I don't care if it's waste management or sewage management. I want to build something that is used, because he worked so long in the telco community. And so he would work on stuff that wouldn't be implemented for 5-10 years down the road. In fact, he was telling me yesterday how, I think it was the cell tower on the moon that he worked on 10 or 15 years ago that at some point recently, worked, right?
No kidding.
Yeah. So it's pretty cool stuff. And he's been in ML for forever, which is machine learning, which is really the predictive, analytics. Right. So that's another thing about Aircon is, how do you predict your on-time performance? That has to do with weather and dollar, and how do we predict capacity? How do we predict rates in the future, even though it isn't necessarily posted yet, right? Because that's where the ML comes into play. Down to the fact that, hey, it's 3:30 on a Friday. Don't use company A because their on-time performance is only 50%. Pay the extra $100 for company B because their on-time performance on this Friday is 98%. So there's that. There's seeing how it can benefit people and people can stay relevant. I'm a pretty big supporter of like, how do we help people be their dreams, right? Or fulfill their dreams of owning their own business or those type of things. I think it's pretty passionate, and it's new. Right. So people aren't doing this, right? People aren't, they're doing bits and pieces of it, right? They're North Star's the airline, right? But they're adding these little bits and pieces on to the forwarder. Or maybe they're an asset person, right? Or a trucker, right? And they're really good at that, in the Dallas Metroplex area. Well, how does a freight forwarder in Seattle know about trucker A, right? That has 99% satisfaction or however you want to measure it. How do we help them gain more business from forwarders up north? How do we help so there's just the possibilities of benefits continue to pop or show themselves, if you will, that gets me pretty excited.
Yeah. Great. Well, let's land it there, Chris. We'll put it in the show notes, but how can folks find out more about your company and connect with you?
They can go to aircon.ai website, which will be launched pretty soon, or airconai.com. They can find me on LinkedIn, Chris Condon, Condon, or they can email me at sales@airconai.com.
Great. Well, congratulations on pretty exciting business and securing that big round of funding and exciting times for you, man. I'm happy for you. Appreciate you spending time with us.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that for sure. And I appreciate your time today and hope to see you all soon.
All right. Until next time, keep it real.
Thank you for listening. This podcast is powered by Onin, the staffing partner delivering real results for manufacturing, logistics, and food processing companies nationwide. To learn more, visit www.oningroup.com. Until next time, keep it real.